About to go live, everyone, so give me just a moment. And hello, everyone. Welcome to our Digital Marketing Masterclass, Google Changes Affecting Digital Marketing, with Matt Bailey, the founder and president of SiteLogic Marketing and a digital marketing faculty member at Simplilearn. Before we get started, I would like to remind you of how to use the WebEx controls. Please place your questions for Matt in the Q&A box. We'll be able to take some of those at the end in the Q&A section of the presentation. And if you do use the chat, make sure you address it to all panelists rather than host and presenter. We will not see it if you just use the default host or host and presenter. So all panelists for the chat. And we are going to be doing a few polls today. So I would like to start with this very simple one, which is, how much work experience do you have? If you're watching through streaming on YouTube or LinkedIn, please put your answers in the chat. The second question of this poll talks about how you're feeling today. We've been doing that since the pandemic started. Check in with people. Got about 20 seconds left on the poll. Okay, get your answers in, please. Right. And you can see we have a pretty even distribution of people by years of experience, with a good representation of people both at the very experienced end and at the junior end. So Matt will tailor his presentation to cover all of that and both segments of the audience. But the nice thing to see is that vast majority of you are feeling well, are doing better than well. So we hope that this presentation will brighten your mood if you're not in that category. With that, let me introduce Matt. And Matt Bailey is the president of SiteLogic. He's a digital marketing instructor for the Direct Marketing Association in New York City, instructor for the OMCP, and author of several books, including Internet Marketing an Hour a Day, Wired to be Wowed, and Teach an Old Dog New Tricks. So we're very proud to have him as part of our digital marketing faculty, and we're very lucky to have him here today. Hi, Matt. I think you're on mute.
How are you doing today, Stuart?
Great. And I'm going to let you have screen privileges so that you can present to us.
All right. Hopefully everything is up and viewable. And I'm also, just so you know, I'm going to turn on the chat box here. I'm not going to be able to look at it all the time, but if you have any questions and would like to interact as we go along, that's a great place to do it. And hope you are ready to cover some of the changes that Google has been making. And they're around two areas. Number one, location, and number two, language. And around those two areas, Google has been doing a lot of implementing and using their machine learning in order to change how the results render and how to determine who gets what results. So that's what we're going to cover in this hour's the changes to location, the changes to language processing, how they're implementing machine learning, and the impact on keywords. And so that is going to be key as you move forward, especially in optimization, but also in paid search. There are a lot of implications on both of those. Now, the first thing is the location and the emphasis on local. And this has been increasing over the past few years. Mainly, and I'm going to go into a little bit of the background why this is. Now, show of hands in the chat. How many of you remember when the internet made noise? That when you logged on, there was this terrible screeching, beeping noise that went on through the modem. How many of you remember that? I'm going to look at the chat here and see how many. Yeah, we've got a couple. Yeah, this kind of helps me date the audience and know how long some of you have been online. Absolutely, yeah. So now think if you could remember back to those days when you had to log on through a modem and you heard the screechy noise. If you remember those days, you'll know that you only had a certain amount of time, maybe 20 hours a month, maybe 10 hours a month, but you had a limited time budget based on how long you could be online. And you had to buy hours or something like that. And so, because there was a limited amount of time, when you sat down on that old PC and you got online, you checked your mail. You did the searches you needed to do. You checked a couple of things and you then got logged off and you were off the internet. And so, because of that time budget, it affected your behavior as to how long you would spend on websites, how long you would spend online. Well, then some of you might remember the transition to broadband. Now we don't have to log in through the telephone modem anymore. We can just plug in to the back of our computer and we're always on. And think about how that changed your behavior. You went from a time budget to now it's always on. So now, as you walk by your computer, you can just walk over and check your email anytime during the day without having to log on. You can go to websites and spend time. You can leave it on because it's always there and it changed your behavior. Well, now we went through another drastic behavior change. Not only is the internet always on, it's now always with you. Through a mobile device, you now carry around everything that you used to do. There's no time budget, it's always there. And because it's mobile, it has now changed your behavior. Maybe recently you've sat and thought about how much that little device has changed your behavior and your thinking just in the past few years. It's amazing how smartphone devices have changed how we go about our day, how we go about business, whereas 10 years ago, we would have never imagined that our lives would change this much. So think about the progressions of how the technology has changed our behavior, both in business, culturally, and individually, because that is why Google is adjusting the way they are. And there are three primary emerging behaviors based on the influence of smartphone technology on our lives. Number one, we are searching for more decisions than ever before. Before we make any kind of decision, we are going and searching. And now we've always done this. That's always been a behavior of search. But now what we find is people are searching for decisions big and small. Everything from what kind of shampoo should I use to, as you can see here, what were the best movies? As you can tell during the pandemic, I think people have been at home, so they're looking for the best movies. They're also searching for mattresses, best translators, trading apps, best series, video editing. But also, we see this increase in how people search, such as increase in people searching for the best, an 80% increase over the past couple of years, a 6 times increase in things to do. And of course, with the pandemic, menus are shooting up. But what's interesting is the best dating app is increasing dramatically. So what's happening is we are searching for more and more, relying on the search engine to give us information we need to make a decision, both big decisions and small decisions. Now, the second thing is we're demanding personalization. We want personalization. We want personalized results based on who we are. And that's why we're seeing, like I mentioned before, what kind of shampoo is best for me. That is a typical search term. Or what kind of uh, food, what kind of diet should I be on? It's people are putting on very limited information, but expecting an amount of personalization. Now, I always find this kind of humorous because everyone wants to be an individual and is searching for something good for them. But at the same time, when I go look and see what people are doing, they tend to be doing what everybody else is doing. We're not always as individual as we think. This is a great Instagram channel called Insta Repeat, and it shows how everyone's doing the exact same thing, the same poses, the same places. Nothing's new. Everyone's just repeating what everyone else is doing, even though we want personalization. And then also, through that personalization, this is the emphasis on local that is increasing dramatically because of our smartphone behavior. I went through and I looked at just some of the, what's near me searches. Uh, Obviously, in most countries, the number one search or the number one group of keywords that people are searching near me is COVID testing and COVID vaccines. But then also, I find it interesting in the US, boba tea is one of the top searches. People are looking for boba tea near me. They're looking for hiking trails. Jamaican food has made an impact somehow. Bike shops and puppies. That's what people in the US are searching for near me. Now, I find it interesting in the UK, they're looking for post boxes, financial consultants, and McDonald's near them, and also car parts and takeaway. But whereas in India, what I'm finding is Wi Fi, Kia showroom, Ayurvedic shops, and Akshaya centers. So it's interesting to see in the different countries. Like I'm interested to see because like in the U.S. people are searching for Jamaican food. In the UK they're looking for McDonald's. In India, it's the I'm trying to think the oh there was food that was showing up there and I can't remember what it was. And in Japan, it's Burger King and pet shops and laundromats. So it's interesting to see just basically by country. And I'm sure if you look in different regions, you'd see more influence. But I thought that would be a great way just to kind of show how people regionally are looking for things near them and they're relying on search to show them what's around. Now, here's the third behavior. Remember, number one is searching for decisions. People are searching for decisions, big and small. Number two, people are demanding personalization. Three, people are becoming more impatient than ever before because they're making decisions faster than they've ever made them before. And so as a result, we have what we call the fluid consumer. And that is the fluid consumer expects your website and your app to work wherever they are, on whatever device they're using, through whatever channel they find you, in any format, and it needs to work now. That is the fluid consumer. Very demanding, very impatient. And if your site, your app, your anything within your social activity doesn't work, they have no patience for it. And so they're moving on. So those are three emerging behaviors that are being influenced by our smartphone culture. Now, because of that, Google is seeing how we use smartphones and the rise of the types of searches that are done on smartphones. And most of them revolve around local searches. Here's something I'd like you to do. Pick up your phone and go pick up your phone, go to a web browser and type in myactivity.google.com. That's myactivity.google.com. Now, if you have a Google account, I should preface it with that. If you have a Google account, which I'm assuming most of you do, you're going to see your activity on Google for the past few months, listed by day. Every search that you've made, every video that you've watched. Also, if you're using Google Maps, every destination that you have mapped in Google Maps. And so now I will say this, if you're on an iPhone, that's about all you'll see. However, if you're on an Android phone, you're using Google Android as your operating system, you're going to see a lot more information listed in your activity. You're going to see what music you listen to. You're going to see any contacts that you've called or what's been going on. And that's because of Android. It's tied into Google and any app that you've got installed and how you use the app, when you use the app, what music you listen to through the app is all going to be listed into your activity. Has anyone done this? I would love to know your reaction to seeing your activity in Google. Is anyone surprised by what you've seen, or maybe a little, yeah, maybe a little, yeah, I would say borderline between amazement and, ooh, oh no. Okay, yeah, we've got some. Some are surprised. Yeah, yeah, Sylvia, yeah, they're following us. Absolutely. So Rob didn't realize is, yeah, they use Google that much. Yeah. Oh no. By the way, Saswati, using incognito doesn't change anything. Using incognito does not mean that Google does not track what you're doing. Read the terms of service of incognito mode, and all it means is that they don't keep the cookies from the session, meaning that incognito does not keep third-party cookies. So incognito doesn't hide you from Google, especially if you're using an Android phone, because that is now. Okay, great questions. I'm seeing a lot of things here. Is this invading your privacy? Not be If you signed up for a Google account, you agreed to the terms of service. This is the terms of service that Google can track your activity. Not only can they track your activity, but they can share it with third-party advertisers, people who want to bid on reaching you and getting their ads in front of you. So yeah, this is the thing, and someone made it here. Someone made the point here. Yes, we all know that Google is tracking us. We all know that. But when you see it and you see how much data they have, and this is just the data they're showing you, it's a bit disconcerting. It's a bit uncomfortable. Even though we know it's happening, it's uncomfortable. So you can also get into there. And by the way, you can get into the account. You can limit how much Google is tracking you. You can limit some things there. Now, whether you putting limits on that actually limits what they see and what they track, that's a good question. But I will say this, when we agreed to create a Google account, this was terms of service, so they are not invading your privacy. Same thing, if you're using an Android phone and you download an app from the Android store, that app has to integrate with the Android operating system and gives Google an open window into how you use that app. And that is all agreed to in the terms of service that you signed up for. So great questions, and I hope yeah, some of you have reacted quite strongly there, and I hope this helps. And I'm going to show you a couple other things here as well as we go along. All right, now the reason why Google is focusing on local and language is because it's driven by our mobile behavior. You think about it, 10 years ago, mobile was really, it was really just starting in, and really it was kind of like your business people had mobile. And then it became affordable and everyone's got mobile, and even the kids have mobile now. So it's almost everyone has a mobile phone. So think about the dramatic increase in data that's happening. Those of you that looked at your activity, how much of that is driven by your mobile behavior? 80%, 50%? How much of that is happening on your mobile? And now think about it, just 10, 15 years ago, the majority of data was from what you did on your desktop while you were online. Now, everything you do on that mobile is being tracked and recorded. And so Google has a lot more data to deal with. And now they can start reacting to this. So Google Mobile has dramatically increased the amount of data available. All right. Now, when we look at our search results, and I'm going to search for, auto insurance or car insurance. It's a great way to get a sense of what's happening, because right at the top of the results, you're going to get ads. Then you are going to get local business listings. And this has become a big, big part of the search results. You're going to see more and more local listings. And what's interesting is I did not search for, now my search here was for home, auto, insurance. Now, I did not search for near me, but Google knows where I am by my IP address. If I'm on my desktop, it's by my location if I'm on my phone. So I don't always have to use near me in the search. Google knows where you are. For some reason, everyone seems to think adding near me will increase the relevance, but it does not. It simply, is a search key phrase for Google to use, but Google is naturally going to customize the results based on your location. Then we have our knowledge graph, and these are additional questions. And finally, at the bottom here, we get to organic search results. And so, as you can see, the results are having more and more influence based on location. Now, local influence has three areas that will help you increase your relevance for local influence. Number one, it's your actual location. We know that. Number two, it's relevance. How relevant is your business or your content to the search? And number three is the authority. What's the authority of your website in gaining that visibility? So very similar in SEO. This should not be a surprise. Well, number one is location. And location, here's the number one thing that you can do to improve your location relevance and your location ability in Google. And that is to make sure that you have tied down the NAP, name, address, and phone. You need to have a consistent address format. And this is, if you don't have consistent address formats across different social accounts or business accounts or Google or post, anything like that, then what happens is it looks like different businesses in different locations. The more consistent your business address is, the more consistent it is according to a postal service format. This is one thing I highly recommend, is look and see what the postal service format is for your address, and then go out and make sure that every place your address is listed on your website, on other websites, on business directories, social accounts, everywhere. Make sure that your address is consistent. Where things go wrong is typically like directions. Like we've got three examples here: NW, Northwest, and Northwest as two words with capitalized. Those look like three different directionals. And so if you have those mixed around in different formats, it does not present a consistent address format. We see the same thing like suite numbers, suite 3, and abbreviateds, things like that. It can change. And so The more consistent this is, the more your location is consistent and it will be read by Google. And the more consistent it is, the easier it is for Google to determine location. Now, here's what I love: relevance. Now, relevance is determined if you're doing SEO, you're making content, you're creating content, and you're creating relevant content. You're using keywords. And this is where I love looking at Google My Business for local for local businesses. And this report here, how customers search for your business. This is what tells you if your relevance is increasing in your local area, and that is the discovery. All right. Now, the yellow, the yellow is all branded. And if people are finding me for my branded term, I'm glad about that. I'm happy about that. But it means that people have to know me. They're typing in my brand name in order to find me. Same thing with direct. They're looking for the business name or the business address, okay? And they're just going directly there. Now, if I see that branded and direct is less than 50% of my overall searches, I'm really happy, because the bigger this blue bar is, the bigger the discovery portion is, it means people are searching for general keywords about the product, about the service. They don't know the business name. They're searching for what they need. And the bigger that blue bar is, it means more people are finding me for general search terms, which means I'm producing relevant content. And Google is associating my relevant content with their search, and it's increasing my local visibility. So that's one of the easiest ways to find out, like a temperature check, to see how relevant your site is, by looking at how many people are finding you through a discovery search of products or services. Next is authority. An authority, someone asked where this data is. It is in Google My Business. So if you have a local business, go make sure it's listed or claimed on Google, and you'll be able to see this data. Now, authority. This is the third level. Authority is from links, mentions, reviews, and also how active you are in Google My Business. And on Google My Business, you can create posts. So the same way, if you have a website with a blog and you're making posts, you can do it in a scaled down version on Google My Business. And so look around for your local citations, local listings, business directories. Do you have links in all these areas that show that you are integrated into the community in this local area? But also, reviews are a huge part of local authority. Are people leaving reviews either on your site or through Google, through Yelp, through other third parties? The more reviews you have, the more it increases that local authority. And that's one of the ranking signals for Google. All right. In a survey of SEO experts around the world, just to find out what were the key local ranking factors. And again, most of our searches tend to be local. The more you rely on that phone, the more you're doing localized searches. And hopefully, looking at your activity, you realized how much you rely on your phone. You rely on Google to help you find places locally. So now, to increase your local capability, uh, the, the experts, it all came down that about 25% of your local influence was from your Google My Business account. So again, if you have a local business, go claim that, and go be active in it. I tell people you need to look at it at least monthly. If you're getting a lot of interaction, then you need to look at it weekly, and take advantage of all the things that you can do on Google My Business. But also, what's important is links, reviews, and on-page SEO. That is probably about 45% of what influences your local visibility. And then we get here to, we probably got another 30%, which is broken up across citations on other websites, personalization, Behavioral means that they were looking for this type of information, and social indicators here are really kind of small. So those are the things that you can do if you just do Google My Business, some SEO, and build reviews. Those are three powerful things that you can do to increase your local presence. All right. We've got a quick poll here in the middle, and I would like to know, maybe look back at your activity, and how many local searches would you estimate that you make in a week? 1 to 5, 5 to 10. Stuart, if you could put up the poll there, great, love it. I would like to know, if you remember your history, or maybe you need to go back and take a look at it. How many searches do you make in a week? Local searches. Let me say that. Stuart, I can't see the results of that. Can you see that? Oh, there we go. Wow. Wow. I expected the, 6 to 10 to perform, but yeah, almost a fourth of you are over 20 a week. Yeah, isn't that amazing how much it has changed our behavior over the years? Fantastic. All right, now let's look at the second half. So the first half was all about localization, and because of the increase of how we use our phones to rely on Google to find local things, now, let's start looking at the language. The language is a completely different aspect of this, but because of the increase of searches, every year, Google gets more and more searches. And even Google has said that there's a good percentage of searches every year that they've never seen before. And that is amazing to me, that every day there are searches being made, and it's literally the first time that search has ever been made on Google. And so a lot of times those types of searches, they don't always have an easy answer. And so Google has been investing heavily in language products and language research to find out how to better understand some of these searches and provide results. Now, one of these was BERT. BERT is and I like that it's short for bidirectional encoder representations. Google likes to play around with these names in order to name what it is. And what BERT is all about is there's a lot of nuance to language. And that nuance takes place in how we use words. Now, and those of you, if English is your second language, you probably, or your third language, you probably know how difficult a language English is. There are so many words like this, like the word like. Now, how is the word like used? I like coffee. Some of you probably seen. I love coffee. Now I can also say this coffee tastes like dirt, or I feel like a movie star. My friend and I are alike. It's like, just what are the ways we use that word? And now, how is a computer supposed to interpret that word when it's being used in a search query? Because it has so many applications that are not the same. And that's one of the things that every language has this. I think English probably just has more. It's just more of a frustrating language. And so a lot of these language algorithms are attempting to figure this out. And this is what also another aspect of our behavior that Google's trying to figure out is when we need to describe something and we don't know what it is. And this is called keyword foraging. Keyword foraging is when I need something, but I don't know what it's called. Or, a great example is my wife who's trying to find an actor when she's watching a television show and she can't remember their name. But she thinks she knows what movie they're in, and she's trying to describe who this actor is in the search bar. And that's called keyword foraging, is when I'm using search to find the word with which I will then do my actual search. Hopefully I explained that well. It's when we don't know the word. Also, if there are dialectic differences. There, a difference, in England, in the US, we call it an elevator. In England, it's called a lift. And then also, I love watching the British Bake Off, and they have different words, castor sugar, and we would call that powdered sugar. There's different words, and I'm not always sure, what's the word for this if I'm trying to do a recipe. I need to know what that is so that I know how to search for it. Also, and this happens more times, is if I need a solution, but I don't know what it is. And so I'm trying to describe my problem. And this happens a lot if you've ever had to troubleshoot anything that's wrong with your computer or a printer or something with your network. You don't know what the solution is. And somehow we have to describe the problem in a way that we get good search results, which is very difficult. And so we describe things, we describe what it looks like, or one of the things, and this was very interesting from a test subject who was being observed and how they search. And one of the things they said is, especially in fashion, in fashion, you have to know the name of something before you can go look for it. The example she gave is she wanted something that was called a long sweater. And that's all she knew. It was long sweater. And all she knew was it was like a cardigan, but it's long. And she said, especially in fashion, you have to know the words. And it makes it very, very difficult to actually search for the product you want when you don't know what it is, but you can describe it. Now, from an SEO standpoint, what does this tell us? This tells us we need to get better at describing our products. How would people search for your product if they don't know what the name is or don't know the technical words for it? How would they describe it if they were looking for it? And so enabling that and adding that into your content will enable you to be found for it. But Google actually is trying to figure this out so that they understand what people are searching for in order to direct them to the right place and maybe save them that second search for when they know the word. All right. Now, one of the latest technologies Google has started implementing is called MUM, Multitask Unified Model. It doesn't really mean anything. Basically, what they're saying is this is 1,000 times more powerful than BERT. And what it's looking for is complex queries, complex searches that have no simple answer. And also being able to draw information from other languages. So they've got 75 languages that they're working on right now that if I search for something, a great example would be if I want to, if I'm trying to think what would be, something I want to do. If I wanted to go hiking across a certain mountain range or something like that, what would I need? There's no simple answer to that. However, what Google would be able to do, what their target is it would pull information from other people who have been there and blogged about it and took pictures of it, as well as their information. It would translate any information from another language website or another language blog, and it would give me the information I need to determine what do I need in order to hike that mountain range or to go to that location. And also, it is pulling information from video, text information. It's also pulling data and information from images. One of the examples Google gave was uploading a picture of a pair of shoes saying, are these shoes good enough to run a marathon? What kind of a search is that? What Google is encouraging is some amazingly creative searches so that if you take a picture of a pair of running shoes and ask, can I run the New York City Marathon in these shoes? Google's going to give you an answer. And that answer is going to be pulled from other experts, other websites, and other websites in other languages in order to provide you an answer. So this is what Google is doing with language is, and I have to say, I love language. I'm fascinated by language. This is just exciting to me what's happening from a technology standpoint. From an SEO standpoint, things are getting a bit weird. All right. And here's where this is going. And after this poll, I'm going to get into how, as an SEO, we have to react to this. All right, last poll. Would love to know what marketing skills you're most interested in learning. So I wanted to thank you all for attending this webinar. We're coming in. I will finish up this section and then we can do some Q&A. So thank you all for making the time to attend this webinar. And I hope already it's been a little enlightening. And some of you, I think, maybe have some work to do to go back to your activity settings in Google. All right, the poll is closed. And yeah, SEO by far up at that 62%. Yes. SEO, content marketing, social media. Yeah, those three are typically the top three. And really happy to see that. Fantastic. Great. All right. Now, let's look at the implications for SEO based on location. We already talked about what you can do to increase location, but what is all this language technology doing to us as SEOs? There's a huge impact on keywords. This is where everything starts. Now, I love working in keywords. And I'm one of those who, if you remember, when we used to be able to see the keywords people used to come to our website, I long for those days. Oh, please, could I see my keywords again? But that was the first step Google made in hiding keyword data. They didn't want us, the SEO, the website owner, to see the keyword data that was driving people to our site. I think a large part it was because that people were keying on certain words and focusing on that word because that word's producing sales. That word is doing things. And so I'm going to focus on that. And I think Google knew that if they took away keywords, that it would take away our ability to focus on these terms. And then also, Google was allowing you to receive keywords if you were doing paid search. And you could see the words people made if you were paying through the ads. But then they started taking that away. And so more and more, Google is hiding all of the keyword data in behind their walls, and they're not sharing it. And you've probably seen this. This is the most frustrating thing at all to see in your analytics, and that is keyword not provided. Yeah, why? Why is this happening? Let me tell you why. This is what's going on. Now, if you've done any keyword research, you might have seen this. This part I was going to do live, but I said it's just going to be quicker to do this with screenshots. If I use a keyword tool like Word Tracker, and I type in something like summer camps, look at this. I get 4,000 keyword suggestions. All right, 4,000 keyword suggestions. And then I'm seeing volumes, monthly volumes in the thousands. If I do the same search on Google's keyword tool, look what they give me. One keyword. I'm not seeing the variations. I'm not seeing adventure camp in California. I'm not seeing, we've got 4,000 variations here, but according to Google, there's only one term. Wow. Well, that's not unique. Look at it here. If I search for a couch and I ask Google to give me some keyword ideas, I get two. I get sofa and I get couch, depending upon what you call it. But here, if I go to Word Tracker, I get 5,000 keyword suggestions. 5,000. And I'm also seeing the volume amounts. Look at this. So 14,000, 11,000, 8,000. Okay. Look what Google gives me. 1 million to 10 million for these two terms. Does something seem off here? Yeah, Google is not sharing data. Google is taking all these keywords. As you can see, 5,000 variations. And by the way, Word Tracker stops at 5,000. So they're taking 5,000 different keyword suggestions, and what they're giving you are 2. They're boiling it all down to the core phrase. And that's what they want you to bid on if you're doing paid search. They want you to bid on this keyword that drives close to 1 million visits. This keyword drives even more. And what they're telling you is let us figure it out rather than you. Because those of you that do paid search, you're getting keywords, you're matching them to certain search phrases, to the phrase match, the broad match, things like that. And they're asking you to let them manage all of these combinations. Let's look at a couple. If I look for auto body shop, this is a local search. I need to get something fixed in my car. I have 1,400 keyword suggestions. Google gives me 1. Looking for a doctor. Look at all this. I've got all kinds of doctor searches. Google gives me 2, family doctor, family practice doctor. This is for almost everything. Pool table, and I have cheap pool tables, pool table light, coin operated pool tables. And here's what's frustrating. I have 4,500 keyword suggestions for a pool table, and they each, look at these, they describe different things, like a light or lighting that is completely different than coin operated. Completely different. They're 2 different things. But Google is saying 1 keyword. Wow. Yeah, this is Google Keyword Planner. This is what Google is providing you. So, yeah, in one way, Google's making it simpler, but what's happening? And what's happening is Google is taking all the plurals and they're merging them together. Anything that has acronyms, they're putting it together. Any variants, like place, location, features, it's all coming down. Anything that has spaces or hyphens or anything, Google is combining all of that. So they're taking like the 5,000 variations and bringing it down to 1, maybe 2 keywords. And what they're saying is, I'm doing my research and I'm finding that. And what Google is saying is these 2 are all you need. Ooh, especially for paid search, that's what's happening. Now, here's what's going on is that Google is only letting you see a tiny bit of the keyword universe. They don't want you to see everything. They are going to manage this. They're going to hold it and control it. And this has everything to do with control. Everything to do with the control of search and the control of, this is their plans for 20 years in the future. This has everything to do, by the way, Google, 80% of their revenue comes from ads. Okay? 80% of their money comes from ads. So all of this, think about it, they don't care what goes on with SEOs because we don't make them money, all right? What makes them money are ads. And so a lot of this keyword data is being focused into understand how to get more people to click on more ads because that's what makes money. All right. So from an SEO standpoint, they're only going to show us a tiny little bit of the keyword universe. Here's what's happening. Like I said, so we've got, 5,000 keyword variations. Down here, we're seeing, 1 to 2 keywords that now what Google wants you to do in a paid search, they want you to bid on those terms. And of course, anyone who's doing paid search is saying, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm going to use matching. I'm going to find the keywords that I absolutely need here, and I'm going to use those, and I'm going to match them. But if you go set up a paid search account right now, you don't get the tools to do that. Now, what's happening in here, all right, this is Google's machine learning. And this is where, Bert and Mum are really taking the task. What they are doing is they are saying everything between here and here is theirs. They will determine relevance, intent, location, motivation. They will determine that from these variations, and based on that, they will determine if it's relevant for your website. That's what they're going to do. Is you will have optimized your, now hopefully you're taking these 5,000 variations and you're applying them into your website. You're creating articles about what people want to know and how to, and you're doing the SEO, and that's the only thing you can do. You take these variations and you apply that to the content on your website. Google is creating a walled garden where no one can see what the processing is behind the scenes of what people search for. And so when someone makes that search, they're going to apply their language and their machine learning. Now, what's that machine learning also based on? History. That's the big one. Okay? That's the big one. Your search history. Everything that you just looked at in my activity, all those searches, all those videos you watched, all the locations you had, the kind of music you listened to, what Google is doing is they are putting you into segments. And so you as a consumer are being segmented into hundreds of interest segments based on your history. So now when you do a search, you go into this keyword universe, and Google is applying all their machine learning language algorithms to your search, and they're matching it to your history. And what have you searched for before? What have you bought recently? Where have you been recently? And they will adjust the search to you and give you those results more personalized than ever based on your activity. They want to do the same thing in paid search. And what this does is it becomes much more, if anyone's been doing paid search for years, this is very aggravating. But what they are telling business owners is you bid on those 1 to 2 keywords and you let us handle who's relevant and who's not. And we'll deliver relevant traffic to you. I don't like that. I really don't. I don't really trust Google to do that. I want to manage that myself. I want to do it. And it's a complicated process. And so when Google is telling an average business owner, you just set up a budget, tell us what business you're in, and we'll take care of the rest. It sounds good. But that's how they're doing it, is they are processing all these searches that are made and not allowing anyone really to see behind the curtain of what's going on. And that's how they are going to manage all of this. So more than ever, you need to rely on keyword research tools. And when I do this, I went through this last time, and just to kind of give you an overview of what I do from this is, number one, you look at this. I have 5,000 keywords for insurance, all right? I know there's more, so I can dig in and even get more. And I'm going to export all those keywords. Typically what I'll do is I'll export it into Excel. And that way I can look at it and manipulate it within the Excel tables. I can see what keyword there is, the volume, I can get some competition and things like that. And I start now reviewing all those keywords, and what I will do from there is then I will theme the keywords. I will cluster them according to different factors. Again, location, features, timing, intent. I will take all those keywords, the 5,000 keywords that I got out of here, and I start looking to see what are the themes that I can derive. So I can look for synonyms. People use the word auto and car interchangeably. However, car is used 3 times more than auto. If you're an SEO, that should be blowing your mind, because now that guides you as to how you should optimize. That you should use the word car 3 times more than auto. But now let's look at some themes, some clusters you can make out of the keywords. People, when they search for insurance, they search based on cost. And I see words like cheap, inexpensive, low rates, discount, how much. Those are all cost-based keywords. And so I can cluster these words And now when I create my content, if I'm creating content for people who are looking for low cost insurance, I now have a whole group of words that I can pull from and use in my content. Same thing if I have different product types. If I have insurance for classic cars, if I have insurance for high risk or a new car or an antique car, this tells me people are searching for it. So now I can go create content for it. It gives me a map to follow. Now, also, another theme is comparison. People compare. So they're looking for the best insurance or how to compare insurance. What's the average cost? What's local? What's nearby? And so I can take that into account. And when I'm looking at how to compare insurance, anything like that, and then I can develop content along these themes. Building these themes will make me more relevant for Google's language processing because they're theming as well. And the more I do it, the more it matches how they are processing this language. All right, I've gone a little bit longer than I planned here, but I was having a lot of fun with you. So we've got a few minutes left and I can answer some questions. Stuart?
Yeah, we've got some very interesting questions from the audience. I'm sure we won't have time to take all of them, but I wanted to ask from Vidrant, is virtual reality going to play part in search engine results in future?
That's a great question. I don't see it happening right away. I'm doing some work in virtual reality right now, and it's going to be a hard transition. And the main reason why is because it requires an additional device. And what that is, it's a gatekeeping device. A great example is QR codes. QR codes came out 10 years ago. Nobody knew how to use them. And not only that, no one's phone had a native application that would read it. And so you had to download a QR code reader to use the QR code. And now, because of the pandemic, did you notice your phone naturally has a QR code reader? You just take a picture. So now a 10-year-old technology is now in a place where everyone can use it and everyone knows what it was or everyone knows what it is. So it's the same thing with virtual reality. We have a physical obstacle. I think when that obstacle's removed and it becomes much more a part of your life, that's when we'll see it really making an impact.
Great. Neha asked a really good question. You talked about how users are impatient and want everything now. How do marketers use that impatience in their favor?
Um, Part of that, great question. I saw this the other day when someone was talking about building a customer journey, and they were talking about the buying cycle and the buying process and what was missing. And in fact, they made the statement that no one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to buy that. And I had to disagree because that happens all the time. People are unpredictable. And so I need to give them a path. I need to create content and a path for those people that, they just want it right now. They don't care what the content is. So I need to give them a direct path to do that. And maybe that's, whether it's the content, maybe it's the function. I need to allow people to go right to what they want, regardless of I may have a whole journey. I may have a whole path set up. I need to give some shortcuts too.
Yeah, and this is why in American supermarkets they put all the candy right next to the checkout stand.
That's right. That's
Because
right.
they want that impulse. Um, AJ asks if Google is getting rid of cookies soon.
They said they were. They said they were going to do that. They backed off of that, and they backed off because they were going to use a different technology called Flock, and that is Federated Learning of Cohorts. And what that was is, as a Chrome user, based on the websites you visit, they would put you in a specific segment. And so advertisers could bid and put ads to that segment. Um, it's not a perfect solution. In fact, it's very imperfect. And what happened was, because in Google doing this, it's a power play in the ad tech industry, and they are consolidating all of the data to themselves. And as a result, Amazon said, we are not going to support Flock. In fact, we will block that ability uh, on our Amazon sites. WordPress came out, and now WordPress sites make up over 40% of the internet, of websites on the internet. And WordPress developers said, I think we're going to block Flock too. Joomla, Drupal, other search engines, so many people in the internet industry came out and said, we're blocking what Google's doing. And so Google backed off, and they have given cookies a reprieve. So we don't know now when those third-party cookies are going to go away.
Okay. Kushi asks, does Google's algorithm change by country?
Well, let's answer one big question. Google's algorithm changes daily. So that's one question. It changes all the time. Now, the algorithms, it would be more, I think, based on language, that there would be different, they would be applying the same algorithm, but it might apply differently based on the language. And then for certain countries, Google does do work with different governments. And so there are some restrictions for example, in Europe, where you can't show certain content for sale. And so it's more of just kind of like an addendum to the algorithm rather than, exactly what's going on with that. That's kind of what we're looking at there. So it's slightly, but it's more language based.
Okay. Speaking of language, Kamni asks if there's any scope or effect from tribal or regional languages.
There is. That is what Google is trying to do. I mean, like I said, right now it's 75 languages that they're using in trying to deal with this. But I think they're well over 200 languages or something that they're actually working with. Um, Now, what's interesting is I'm waiting to see how Google can build a more humanitarian application that would be very beneficial. Rather, it seems like they're holding all this in. They're not sharing it. And there's a lot that could be done to help people. And that's the one thing that really, really concerns me about their investment in language, is that they're not sharing it really with the world.
Uh, um, I have a couple of questions I'll ask simultaneously because they both deal with location. Himani asks about what to do if he's an online business who serves 4 or 5 cities, so it has 4 or 5 locations. And Sophia asks, what about businesses that don't have any physical address that are just online?
All right. If you have multiple locations, you can do a different Google My Business for each location. And so you can develop that. And then also you can set, I believe, an administrator over that so that you can claim those. You can still use, now, if you are a local business, but you don't have a physical presence, that's a little more difficult. Google My Business is developed for more location-based businesses. Um, you can try and build that, but if you service more, like kind of like if you're a remote worker and I can do, anything anywhere, it might be a little more difficult. You may want to see if you can do it, because some businesses, you don't have to put in an address, but they do want to know your physical address. So it could help increase your local presence if you want to sell locally.
Okay. I want to close with just one quick question from Raju, who asks, what type of preparation would you recommend for somebody who wants to get ready for applying for a job at Google?
Wow. I'll tell you what, read as much as you can about what they're doing in technology. Think about what area you want to be in. Do you want to be in research? Do you want to be in algorithm? What part of Google do you want to work in? And be prepared. Read as much as you can. Find out what's happening. See the different areas that are there. Because if you go in with saying, I want to learn more about this and I want to contribute here, and you're very specific, that will be part of that.
Great. That's great advice. And it's time for us to wrap up. I'm apologize to anybody whose questions we couldn't take. As Matt is shown on the screen, you can track him down at these different social media handles, Matt Bailey SL at LinkedIn, his Endless Coffee Cup podcast. Why don't you tell the audience about what that is?
Yeah, so I have created a podcast really to follow up with those of you that have taken my classes on Simplilearn, those of you that maybe have seen me in different areas, and I maybe even have met you here or there. But I created the podcast as a follow-up to anyone who's taken my classes online. It's a way to get some better information about what's going on in the marketing world, how that affects us culturally. In fact, one of the last podcasts we did was about 6 myths about SEO that won't go away. And we do talk about some of the language processing that's there, but if you follow the bit.ly link, I highly recommend the 6 SEO myths as a great follow-up to today's session, because that will, I should get the direct link, but I can't get off my desktop here. So that's one of the most recent podcasts. I highly recommend it. And then there's a link to the book, Teach New Dogs Old Tricks.
Perfect. I'm going to leave that up for just a second while I put the links into the chat. Give me just
Thank
a
you.
moment. And there you go. So you have the links to Matt's podcast and Matt's book. And with that, I'm going to take back sharing, Matt.
All right.
And I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank all of our attendees. I'm going to mention a couple of final things real quick. We do have, and I've dropped the link into the chat at least once, but a postgraduate program in digital marketing. And this is a comprehensive program that covers all of the skills of digital marketing, provides you a certificate from Purdue University and access to the Purdue Alumni Association. And it's a great program, takes 5 to 10 hours a week, and I believe it's a 6-month program. And it's a really good way to get to the upper echelon of a digital marketing career. Of course, we have a number of other marketing programs. So if you want to just study a specific skill, you have the ability to do that. But I will drop that into the chat. And hold on a moment as I wait for the chat to come back. The last thing I'd like to announce is our next webinar, which is next Tuesday, less than a week from now. But this is a career webinar with the head of HR at Big Basket, a big e-commerce firm in India, Tian Hari, and he is both a venture capitalist and an executive, and he will talk about the subject of his latest book, which is the role of Jugaad in building your career. Jugaad being thriftiness and economy and making do. And he'll talk about when you want to be thrifty and economical in pursuing your career, and when's the right time to make that big investment in yourself. So it's going to be a very interesting session. I will also drop that into the chat.
I love that idea. I gotta, so early in my career in SEO, it was all about the free tools. And I could list them off, probably the top 20 free tools, and I still use some of them today. So I love that concept. I think that is so perfect. And yeah,
Yeah,
that is great.
and as Hari says, the big trend in startups, especially in India, is the idea that you should do everything on a shoestring and apply Jugaad in all situations. And his thesis is that in startups and in your personal career, there are times when you want to say no to you, God, which is the title of his book. So
Right.
thank you all very much. And thank you especially, Matt, for being here and giving a very interesting um, webinar that covered in depth some really important topics. Um, the comments we've been seeing in the chat have been really appreciative. So
Good.
with that,
Thank you.
we're gonna end the webinar. You can track down Simplilearn on our social media at Simplilearn on Facebook and Twitter, Simplilearn on LinkedIn, and we look forward to not only seeing you at future webinars, but welcoming into the Simplilearn learner community, all of you who want to pursue your digital marketing career further. Thank you again, and this concludes the webinar.